Welcome to my channel. My name is Fleming. I'm a chartered property consultant. I use this YouTube channel to share some of my insight in regards to buying and selling property, also what it's like to work in the real estate industry, and sometimes I provide some information on market updates and tips on investing. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the difference between buying a new home and buying a second-hand home. Also, I'm going to discuss a little bit in regards to determining or what goes into determining the asking price for both. If you're watching this video, hopefully you have seen part one of this video where I discuss the pros and cons of buying a new home or a second-hand home. If you haven't seen it, I will leave a link at the end of this video. Also, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now. I know at least 80% of the viewers haven't subscribed, and I know 90% of the viewers are Irish, so go ahead, go on, support an Irish channel and hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, hit the like button too. I will be putting out a new video in the next few days covering the current market conditions. I will also discuss how you go about viewing a property during this current lockdown. So go ahead and subscribe. So if you've seen part one of this video, you will know that I came to an early conclusion that there is no real good way to determine which is better between a new home and a second-hand home. And also a huge amount of it comes down to personal preference. Budget plays a part, the desired location plays a part, as well as your ability to access the first-time buyer's grant as well. All of these things play a part, but generally speaking, it is very much a personal preference. In the last video, I said I'd focus more on the money side of the question within this video. I had it in my head that I would focus in on a particular area, perhaps an area I knew reasonably well. So I was kind of thinking I'd pick maybe one or two areas in South Dublin or Dublin, and I would pick a new home within that area and find a similar property that was second-hand home that needed a light bit of refurbishment, and also a second-hand home that needed a huge amount of work. I was going to then look at each one of these properties and see which property provided the best value on a price per square foot basis when you added in the refurbishment costs. I thought it was actually going to be a pretty easy task. I hopped onto IPI, which is a property software system that a good few agents use to help review the market values, determine market trends as well. And I thought that by hopping onto this system, I'd actually easily be able to find the properties I was looking for and easily be able to analyze them against each other. So let me actually show you what I mean. The system itself has all the properties that are currently on the market at the moment, but it also has all the past sales as well. You can search certain areas. Within those areas, you can see what the average prices are. You can see if there's property prices are moving within those areas as well. And you can see the number of properties on the market within particular areas too. It also has features in regards to the letting market as well. But I initially thought it was going to be quite easy for me to find three properties, three beds in South Dublin, maybe Blackrock or Sandyford or somewhere like that, where there was a number of new properties being constructed, and I'd be able to analyze each one of those three, because the system itself actually shows you all the properties that are on the market. But even with this system, to my benefit, I still struggled to find properties that had similar enough characteristics which allowed me to analyze this question properly. I found no matter what way I looked at it or what properties I picked, there was no way for me to stay objective within the question, because there was just too many disparities between each property. Each property could have had differences in between larger gardens, extra car parking, or they might have been closer to transport hubs. But effectively, I couldn't match any of them up and similarly enough to allow for an objective review purely based on square footage. So I felt by just applying refurb costs to houses that needed work, if they needed a little bit of work or major work, applying €1,000 per square meter to some properties, and other properties maybe 1,500 per square meter, just simply didn't do this process any justice, because it didn't throw up any clear deciding factors on what was more valuable or what was better, what offered better value between new and second-hand homes, because there was just too many other determining factors that were at play, and looking at it purely on a cost per square foot basis didn't really correctly analyze how someone would value a property, or what the level of demand would be for a certain type of property. And to be fair, I did say I would look at this from purely a money point of view, or I would try analyze it from a money point of view. So I don't want to sound disingenuous when I've kind of come to this conclusion and I'm not providing more details in the number side of things. So with that in mind, I will create a video solely for the purpose of refurbishment costs, and I will look at a number of key elements that you need to look at from a cost point of view when you're carrying out refurbishments. But from a general point of view, just from some headline kind of figures, if you're looking at kind of major refurbishments within a second-hand home, what you need to be kind of budgeting is maybe 1,500 per square meter. If you're talking about adding an extension as well, you may want to budget in and around kind of €2,000 per square meter for an extension. But that will go up or down depending on your level of finishes within the property as well. So moving on to asking prices. I'm going to look at what determines the asking price for second-hand homes and what determines the asking price for new homes, and how they actually differ. There are lots of elements that affect value. There are lots of elements that affect supply and demand, but I will try and explain why there are differences between asking prices, and why there's differences in between determining asking prices for new homes and for second-hand homes. Second-hand homes are generally sold via private treaty. The asking price is a blend between the agent's view on value and what the actual owner wants to achieve. A good agent will be able to put a reasonable market price on the property as the asking price, and mitigate the owner's actual view on value, or view on worth. This is the difference between value and worth. Value is what the market will pay for a property. It's the open market value, i.e. if a property is brought to the market, what a willing bidder will buy the property for and what a willing seller will sell it for. Worth is a different thing altogether. Worth is what an individual puts on a property. So a property might be worth far more to one person than it is another. Worth includes things like memories or hope, and all of those things that some individual might actually put on a property. But the market and the value of a property has to eliminate that, and that's where the balance has to come between a good agent advising an owner of a property in terms of where the actual true value is, because the true value of a property might be completely different than the actual worth of a property to that one individual. Residential property valuations are generally based on comparable evidence. This means that the prices that are put on properties are generally arrived from local sales that have happened. They're recent local sales that have happened within the area. They are adjusted a little bit for little differences within each property, i.e. different sizes of garden, different construction methods, and also if a property has been modernized or not. So there's a whole list of different things that could affect the value, but generally speaking, the value of second-hand homes is determined by comparable evidence, and that's recent sales that have happened within the area. So therefore, the asking price of a second-hand home that's placed on the market is generally determined by the agent based on comparable evidence that they have of local sales within the area, recent local sales within the area. The actual price that it achieves can be based on the bidding process. The bidding process could be competitive or not. If it is a property or an area in high demand, the property could be very competitively bid, and therefore the price could achieve more than the asking price. But The property can sell for above or below the asking price. It depends on where the asking price is set and also what the level of demand is. When second-hand home sales actually go sale agreed and moved into legals, there is a little bit of room for negotiation at that point as well from a legal point of view, and there can be some discussions around the wording of the contract, or what's included in the contract or what's not included in the contract, and what documents are provided within the actual title documents as well. Prices for new homes will also be determined by comparable evidence and local comparable evidence. So will also government grants or schemes that apply to first-time buyers or new homes will also have an impact on the price. But the main determining factor that will actually come into play for the prices set for new homes will be what the developer views as how much they need to cover their costs and what is an acceptable profit level. So what are the costs associated with new homes here in Ireland? Let's just take for an example an average new home here in Dublin, right? Let's take a lot size of 75,000. We'll have construction costs around 200,000. Let's say this is a 3-bed family home. You'll have local council taxes roughly around 14,000. You will have marketing costs of around 3,000. You'll have legal fees and agents fees of around 8,000. You will also the developer will want to have a profit roughly around, on a property like this, around 10%. So let's just say 40,000. Also there is VAT to be added. VAT will be applied on the property at 13.5%. which would be, in this case, would be roughly around 40k. But what actually happens is the developer is able to write off any VAT costs that they had during the construction costs against their payment in VAT on the sale of the property. So let's just say there's 20 odd grand there for VAT costs. This brings us up to a total roughly around 420,000. So the developer would have the view that they at least need to achieve 420,000 for this property. The developer would have set out, perhaps bought a site a number of years ago with the view that this development to stack up, they will need to achieve a price of 420,000. However, the market can go up and down between the time they actually acquire the site, getting planning and construction, and then actually finally selling the house. That could take a period of 2 to 3 years, and therefore the market can go up and down. But let's just say, for example, that in this case an agent is advising them that the market price for the property is around 450,000 now. They have obviously made a profit, a bigger profit than they thought they would have when they actually bought the site. But that's not always the case. Right now, perhaps there is someone who bought a site in 2019. They could be looking at a loss, given if there's a slight fall in values over the next year or two. The introduction of grants that were introduced for first-time buyers may have come in between the time that they actually bought the site and by the time they actually finished construction, and therefore they would be able to sell the property for a slightly higher price than they had originally thought they would be able to. It is important to remember that the government grant for first-time buyers is not really aimed at individual first-time buyers to benefit. The economic benefit is for more homes to be built. So by allowing a new or first-time buyers a grant, it also pushes the price up. But what that actually really does is it probably brings in sites that weren't feasible to be developed to actually be developed out, and it allows developers, it mitigates some of the risk for developers as well. So it's aimed a huge amount of the scheme is devised to try create more and more development. It's not just purely to help out the first time buyer. The main goal is to actually drive development. The first time buyer scheme itself definitely does benefit first time buyers because it could take a number of years to save 30,000 in a deposit, and the scheme gives you effectively gives you 30,000 of a deposit that you can use on a property right now based on tax that you've paid in the past. And even if there is an increase of 30,000 in the value of the home that you have to buy, when you spread that out over the course of a 25-year mortgage, that 30 grand increase has a reasonably minimal impact overall. As I said, it could take years for someone to save up 30,000 in a deposit, and that could delay them a number of years getting on the property ladder. However, an extra 30,000 in the value of a property or the cost of a property when you're purchasing it only translates to about €140 per month in extra mortgage payments that you may have to pay over the course of a 25-year mortgage. Granted, over 25 years, that's a lot of money. However, it's far easier for an individual to pay an extra €140 per month over 25 years than it would be for an individual to save 30 grand of a deposit over a year or two. Prices or asking prices of new homes are made up of a number of different factors. They're made up of costs, the cost of the land, the cost of construction, taxes, as well as developers' profit. And they will be slightly impacted by the agent's advice as well. However, the determining factor of an asking price will very much depend on the developer and the developer's need to cover their costs and the developer's requirement for a certain level of profit. The agent's view on value may have a limited impact on actually what the asking price is set for. Asking prices for new homes differ than second-hand homes because the price is set and it's first come, first serve, i.e. whoever gets their booking deposit down first secures that property. There is no negotiations happening. In a downturn, perhaps there might be a little bit of room for negotiations, but generally speaking, the answer to trying to negotiate on second-hand homes is no. At some stage, if there is a major downturn in different decades, what will happen is there's very limited scope for negotiations, but what might happen is there might be a price adjustment by the agent at some point. In markets of very high demand, we have seen buyers queuing up overnight at certain developments. Definitely this is not something a developer or an agent wants to see, and they definitely will try to limit that in the future. A lot of agents may opt for an email registration going forward and ask for buyers to put more details in terms of proof of funds, etc., and go out to buyers via an email invite to put in their booking deposit. If they secure whoever, again, that will be first come, first served. So there won't be room for negotiation again on new homes. But just a tip on this one, I think it's important. Just because your name is on an email list for a particular development doesn't mean you are going to be the person who gets the first call from the agent when a property becomes available. Generally speaking, the agent is going to ring or contact the person who was the friendliest to them, provided them with the most information, and generally was the nicest person that they met on the day of a viewing or through correspondence. So it's a good idea to be nice to your agent in those circumstances. It's a good idea to follow up regularly as well. Don't pester them, just follow up regularly enough. The legals might also differ a little bit with new homes than they would with second-hand homes. Generally speaking, it should be a slightly easier process. There shouldn't be as much negotiations on the actual contracts because all the contracts will be boilerplates. The title should be reasonably new, and hopefully if the developer is doing a good job, title should be very clean as well. So it should move reasonably quickly and your solicitor should have minimal amount of questions, but they may have questions depending on what stage the development is actually at. So over the last two videos, I have tried to objectively review what is better between a new home or a second-hand home and which provides the best value. My conclusion in the first video, and it still is my conclusion, is that it comes down to a personal preference. Also, your desired location and budget will have an impact, as well as your desire to access the first-time buyer's grant. In terms of trying to distinguish between the two from a value point of view and determining which offers the best value on a price per square foot, right now I think it's too hard to determine that because there's too many variables right now to determine which offers the best value. And it's too hard to actually ask that question from looking at it as a market as a whole. It may be possible to answer that question for an individual if an individual has a preference for one particular new home and one particular second-hand home. It would be possible to do the calculations on that basis. But right now, trying to look at it as a market as a whole, there's just too many different variables that will actually skew the results, and just putting it down to a price per square foot is not a fair reflection of where the market would be. However, that said, if the second-hand home market actually falls over the next year or so, or falls by 5% or 10% over the next year or two, and new homes, particularly new homes under 500,000, remain reasonably stable because of the Help to Buy first-time buyer scheme, then there definitely could be a question asked which provides more value on a price per square foot basis, or which is actually providing better value. If one market actually falls by 5 or 10%, then there definitely could be a question asked in regards to do new homes actually provide good value at the moment. That is if their value don't fall either. So I will finish on that thought. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. The next video will cover a market update as well as how to go about viewing properties in the current lockdown. While I'm shooting this video, I'm realizing that it has got dark outside and my lighting has probably changed dramatically over the course of these kind of 10-15 minutes. So hopefully you'll still be able to see me and this video will come out okay, but sorry for the lighting changing all the way through. And as always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.